Hello, this is Reloading123 and my name is Paul. Today's segment we are going to take a look at powder measures. Just so happens that this particular powder measure is from RCBS. Many of these larger powder measures, and sometimes they call them a powder measure, a powder dump, are very similar in design. But let me show you a few things that how this particular powder measure works. So when you're this is actually going to be an amount, and I could actually show you on the bench, but the mount will oftentimes fit inside a stand like this and be up off the ground, or it can be on a mount like this and just hang off the side of your workbench. Makes sense? 2 screws here. Has a couple different ways to do this, but essentially that's how it'd be mounted to the side of your bench. So you have this type of mount that comes with it sometimes, but this type of mount is really the mount that I would recommend that you get. This is an older mount from Redding that they don't offer this same one anymore. It's a little bit different, but it's still a great mount. So these powder measures, again, this is your lock nut. You screw them into the mount and then you lock it down with this so this doesn't turn. And then what this will do, this particular measure will dispense powder every time you move this arm. So when it's up, the powder pours, into the hopper here, and then, or drum, and then you rotate it, and it's dispensed out the bottom of the unit itself. Now, what you're going to find on occasion is that the drum contains a very specific quantity of powder. So this is a drum that's actually off it. Here's the smooth side. So this is the side. Let me show you the other side of this. The side with the threads is the side that this piece, and this actually adjusts the quantity. It's a plunger that basically screws into here and comes out the other side. So this plunger just adjusts the quantity of powder. Pretty simple. Now what happens is there's certain times that the quantity of powder you can't get enough, too little or too much. And so what the manufacturers have done is they give you an option to switch these drums out, and you take this kind of a lock nut off. Pull out the actual plunger part, and it's pretty obvious that there's a difference in size. So this is going to be the large capacity. This one is thus going to be the smaller capacity. So pretty obvious when you're looking at them, but sometimes it comes with this particular drum. Oftentimes they're going to have to call RCBS and say, hey guys, I can't do 5 or 4.5 grains of bullseye in my 45 ACP or whatever, because this one doesn't go with a small enough capacity. So they'll actually send you this drum for free, typically. But anyway, when you start researching these, make sure that the drum capacity matches the caliber that you're reloading. So it's very simple. As you can see, literally like what I said, it just falls right out of that tube, fills up this drum, and pours out the bottom. It's not very complicated. Now this particular type of powder measure isn't, you don't have to have a powder measure like this. As a matter of fact, you can have a different type of measure. And let me kind of show you some other ways of doing that. So really when you're measuring powder, your book is going to talk about, let's say 30 grains of whatever powder. So you're going to adjust this, and you're going to throw an individual lot of powder until you get consistent 30 grains, and then you'll start your reloading. Let me show you another way of doing that. Some people simply use what's called a trickler, and they will actually just trickle You fill your powder in here in the top, and they just trickle a quantity of powder into this pan, and then measure it on the scale. We're going to talk about scales in a bit, but pretty simple. For example, you'll see me in action. You essentially just tilt it, you spin this knob. This has a threaded end, so the powder just follows the threads, and you can fill this, and then you can get to the weight and your scale. So this is a way of measuring powder. This is a way of measuring powder. There are other ways of measuring powder. I would recommend that you have both this style powder measure and this trickler, and you actually will see that in my reloading video when you're talking about costs. There are a couple things that I wanted to also discuss with you. Very simple. This powder measure has the ability to be mounted on either side. So if you want to throw from the left side, you could actually change the way this drum is put in place. Seems pretty obvious, but you could actually change the direction of the drum if you wanted to throw on your left hand side. It also you can actually change if you wanted, you know, to go down up, or up down. So it's all about you know, your style. I tend to throw powder on my right, and when the ram is down, excuse me, the drum is down, I like having the arm down as well. So that's what makes the most sense to me. Also, be cognitive that there's these inserts into the bottom, and hopefully you can see the difference in diameter there. And what you're going to do is these are going to slide into the bottom of the measure and allow you to dispense powder into certain size cases. So you definitely don't want to use this, excuse me, you don't want to use this style for, let's say, 204 Ruger, right? It's just too small in diameter. You want to make sure that you're using this style for something like 270. The case will fit right in there. You'll dispense it. It'll actually, it's kind of like a mini funnel. And then, and the truth is, most of the time you can get away with the smaller diameter for most calibers. When you start using, you know, rod powders, if this diameter is too small, it could create kind of a bottleneck, and we'll talk to you a little bit about powder. But just be aware that these come with it. They're two different size, what they would call drop tubes, and this one I would use for something smaller like 223, and this one would be, you know, probably 270 on up. So really that's all I have for you regarding powder measures. Pretty simple. They're not a complex design. Seems like all of these drum style powder measures measure very similarly. I say that because they do have their limitations, and I'm going to tell you this more than once, but when you're measuring powder, so you're actually, this thing is, let's pretend this is up in the air and you're measuring powder. You need to get into a consistent rhythm of how you move the drum. Most professional guys that I know, when they actually rotate this and they dispense powder, they kind of do one of these. And that actually not only dispenses everything out the bottom, but kind of settles everything in the top. So get used to kind of going up, up, or you can go up, down, tap, tap, up, down, tap, tap. I'll show you that again in another video, but that's powder measures. Thank you for watching Reloader123 segment on powder measuring.